guys. Well, I was not able to go live today. The internet was shaky, to say the least. So, what I thought I'd do is I would record a podcast and we'll talk about, because there's a lot going on today, a lot happening, a lot of news coming out, a lot of angst, some kind of relief, I think, in Packer Nation. Now, Martellus Bennett has been waived, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about Mike McCarthy looks like is going to be deposed in the Colin Kaepernick collusion case. Rodgers' contract, possible free agents this upcoming off season of perhaps now an upcoming off season of change, and that can be a good thing, can be a bad thing. We're going to talk all about it with this podcast. So this might be an extensive one. I go live for an hour every day. Wanted to make sure, since I didn't get to talk to everybody, that I'd get a chance to talk to you Patreon peeps at least, and because you guys are cool kids anyway. First of all, though, before we get into it all, guys, I want to give a huge shout out, and please join with me in wishing our community's own Chris happy healing. Chris sent me a picture yesterday. He took a tumble on his stairs, and while avoiding stepping on his cat. I mean, the guy saved the cat and sacrificed himself. His leg got wedged in the stair. And Chris, I'm sure you won't mind me telling this story a little bit, but he broke both his tibia and his fibula, spiral fracture, sent me an x-ray. And so first of all, I want to dedicate the show to you, Chris, buddy. I hope you are healing up today. And please, everybody listening to this podcast, jump on the comments and just give well wishes to Chris. Yet another Packer down in a very injury-plagued season. But, Chris, we definitely hope you are resting better today. He had to have surgery, obviously, and the story goes, I believe, he might be released from the hospital today. So, at any rate, want to dedicate this one to you, Chris. Hope you're healing up. Come back stronger than ever. I told Chris, I thought maybe with all the injuries the Packers had, they were going to be opening tryouts, and Chris could have made the team. Now it looks like the dream is dead. So, but definitely well wishes. Hope you get well soon. Well, a lot of news. The not being able to go live kind of really hurt me, guys, and there was just no way. I wanted to make sure and at least get to talk to you guys. I thought maybe a podcast would be the way to do it. It's not like I spent 2 hours preparing. It's about 10 minutes after. Well, it's 20 after 10 when I normally would have gone live. And, but the news I want to start out with is the smaller news coming out that Coach McCarthy is going to be possibly deposed or even put on the stand in the Colin Kaepernick collusion debacle is the word I want to use. And I just find this ridiculous. Number one, McCarthy, all he did was answer a question. He didn't say word one about Colin Kaepernick. What he did was defend his quarterback room like every coach is going to do. And made no derogatory. He didn't even bring really Kaepernick up. It's the reporter that brought Kaepernick up. Why don't you depose him? But at any rate, this just another little pinprick of drama in a season that right now it looks like it's turning into a cluster cuss really fast. I mean, remember, going into the Minnesota game, Packers were primed with a win there to float on top of the division. Win against the Saints, then go into their bye week, and in that short period of time now, everything has turned around, and we are looking at a season in which, we're going to have to find a way just to be competitive. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but possibly be the first year in 8 years? This was going to be the 9th year making the playoffs. Packers on the verge of really sliding down and sliding out of a playoff run. If Hundley can't get the ball in the end zone here pretty quick. And the last thing we need is some dumb little thing, some little pinprick of news and drama, and for no reason whatsoever. I really think it's grasping at straws. They're not going to get anything out of it, and yet it seems to me like a group of people trying to set up a case that really isn't there. Now, with that said, that was not anywhere near. That kind of ticked me off, and I'm interested in your thoughts on that. McCarthy's going to be fine. I think they'll find him to be just as sardonic with them as he is with the Packers beat writers from time to time. But Bennett gets waived. Now, that's the big news. This has been a storyline, from before. I want to, the first things first, though, guys, I have to take everybody back, and this includes myself. I'm pointing all the fingers back at me as well. To when Martellus Bennett was signed, remember how excited we were to have this guy in, Aaron Rodgers, to have another weapon? What an addition he could be to an already high-powered offense, and he could have been. And then the season rolls around, and number one, I think, and I do think this is the underlying issue big time, is our offensive line could not stay healthy. Martellus Bennett, to his credit, is able to block, was needed to do so. But then in the few times, with Aaron Rodgers, mind you, that he was able to get out and run a pass pattern and was targeted with the ball, the guy just couldn't catch the ball. Drop after drop after drop, starting week 2 at Atlanta. He did have the one nice catch against Seattle week 1. We got to give him credit where credit's due. But at that point, that was pretty much the high point of Martellus Bennett's stint with the Green Bay Packers. In the meantime, you have, and I think it's only fair to describe it the way Martellus Bennett described it, his siding with his brother or showing his support of his brother by holding his fist up during the national anthem. Definitely nobody in Packer Nation really happy about that. A lot of severe angst and a lot of drama again. And to add insult to injury, we go into a bye week where Martellus Bennett is exactly the guy that a kid like Brett Hundley needs, a veteran, a big body at the tight end position, perfectly primed to be a safety valve for a kid like Hundley who's really struggling to find his way. I mean, there's no two ways about it, but he's doing some good things. He's unable to get any consistency. He's uncomfortable in the pocket and hasn't been able to get in the end zone. Who better than Martellus Bennett to help bail this kid out? And over the bye week, rather than maybe going through a few reps with him, Martellus Bennett gets on Instagram and basically, and I'm overstating it a little bit, I understand that, but announces his retirement over the bye week, which I found to be just tactless, to be honest. And I've said, a lot could happen, and had the team been able to maybe bounce back, I think he would have second-guessed that. But right now, you come off the bye week, and all of a sudden, Martellus Bennett has this mysterious shoulder injury and is held out of practice. He's not practicing. And lo and behold, the Packers end up, and I think this is actually fortunate, we end up waiving him as a failure to report a medical condition. So we're going to talk a little bit about that. But first of all, I think, and Jeff, one of our community members, and I were texting back and forth this morning, and I think he's right. I think long-term, it's best for him. I personally felt a bit of a sigh. I kind of breathed a sigh of relief that they were able to just offload Martellus Bennett and have a reason to do it that kind of covers their butt in this situation, and didn't have to try and ride it out with him because, yeah, it really did seem like he just didn't have any interest in helping this team out. And at that point, I'm done with him too. Really, I thought, and I mentioned this in a video before, I thought that the Packers had kind of moved on already. And Martellus Bennett, now no longer a Packer. But this is not going to be the end of the story, folks. The Packers, as of right now, have $8 million of their money in play right now. And with the medical fail to report, they can file a grievance to get that money back, or they can void the contract and get that money back. And I have to assume that the smart financial thing for a smart financial team, Packers wouldn't be around if they weren't a smart financial team, I don't think, is to go ahead and do so. Now, what that I think is going to trigger then is some kind of a backlash. Martellus Bennett's not going to want to write a check. This basically amounts to Martellus Bennett writing a check back to the Packers for $8 million. He's not going to do that without a fight. And yet again, another pinprick of drama in a season that is turning into a cluster cuss. As far as Bennett goes, this is a guy that truly could have added a ton to this offense. And had we been able to stay healthy in any regard, especially the Aaron Rodgers health, I think he may have down the road. I think he may have been a good player. There is no question. One thing, I hear all kinds of people saying, I knew all along that we should have kept Cook. and I'm just going to call bullshit on that. I'm sorry. No, that's completely bullcrap from start to finish. The fact of the matter is he didn't work out. But we've got to remember that all of us as Packer, and again, I'm pointing the finger back at myself. All of us as Packer fans have been begging, pleading, and bitching and moaning about Ted Thompson not signing free agents. Now we finally do. And he finally has a year in which we sign some free agents, and what happens? Martellus Bennett turns out to be a dud because he really did nothing. He was a minus like 43 defense adjusted value over average. So he was not a valuable asset at the tight end position. And Ricky Jean-Francois now gone, come back, and has gone again. We've made more moves. And now I think one of the questions we have to ask ourselves is, will Ted Thompson ever be anything but gun shy? I mean, he's tightwad in the first place. He's got tight purse strings. Now is he going to be anything but gun shy moving forward about the possibility of bringing in free agents, especially high-profile free agents? That's the one thing about Martellus Bennett that is absolutely certain. He was a high-profile free agent coming off a Super Bowl win, coming from a team like the New England Patriots. So this team is in greater flux than I think many people in Packer Nation realize right now. There's calls for the defensive coordinator to be fired now, maybe Joe Witt Jr. Promoted. There's calls for McCarthy's head. There's calls for Ted Thompson's head. We've lost Martellus Bennett. We don't know what the situation with Aaron Rodgers is. And in the meantime, the way Brett Hundley's playing, it may not matter whether Aaron Rodgers can come back or not. So I've got, the wheels are turning, folks. A couple of things I wanted to mention. I wanted to talk about, let's see, I got to go back to I did make a few notes quick because I didn't go live, so I thought I'd write down and maybe have some things in order. Rodgers' contract. So I wanted to review that because one of the storylines that's been coming up through all of this is, is Aaron Rodgers going to want to stay with a team that doesn't seem to have any enough good players around them? Whether you blame that on the players, whether you blame that on the coaching staff, maybe Dom Capers, the defensive coordinator, defense coming under fire. Will Aaron Rodgers decide to take the money and run? And that is, I think, a good question. I said yesterday I was very adamant that, listen, the risk of Rodgers leaving is low. He wants to stay here. He's comfortable in the system. He's still going to make a lot of money. But as of now, this Martellus Bennett thing, I'm going to say the one thing that I'm a little concerned about. I am concerned. Aaron Rodgers is a smart guy. Motives are the most difficult thing to discern. So when you talk about Martellus Bennett and whether he wanted to really play or not, whether his heart was in it or not, the motive of Martellus Bennett is the most difficult thing to discern. Now, Martellus Bennett is gone, so we don't have to worry about that. However, I think now we have to ask ourselves whether Aaron Rodgers looks at the way that this team handled the Martellus Bennett situation. Remember, these guys hit it off right from the start. And I have to wonder if Aaron Rodgers isn't reading the tea leaves right now and saying, listen, this team was looking for a reason to get rid of this guy because he brought drama and he brought press that they didn't like and because of the anthem thing and whatnot. And if that's the case, what are we going to get any free agents moving forward? What are they going to be willing to do? And down the road, if I say something on Instagram, are they going to be looking for a reason to get rid of me or other players around me that I need? And I am concerned that now the risk of Aaron Rodgers not ending his career as a Green Bay Packer has moved up slightly. Now I'm going to think about that more. You can comment on that, but I don't think it's gone down because of the Martellus Bennett thing. And his contract is, I did pull up his contract quick. He gets $12,550,000 in 2017. 2018 he's due for $19.8, and then in 2019 it goes up to $20 million. So that 2020 season, keep it on your radar. I said this morning, texting back and forth, I believe that if we're going to sort of make major changes on this team, whether that be the defensive coordinator, head coach, players, free agency, making moves in the draft, trading up, I think that the changes and I look at this team, if we break down the defensive coordinator, we may very well find ourselves in a rebuilding process. Maybe we get rid of maybe we offload a Clay Matthews to clear some cap space and try to make some moves Where does that put us? I think wherever this offseason or sooner puts us in terms of big wholesale changes on this team, I think our changes and our regrowth of this team has to outrun the Aaron Rodgers contract. We have got to show Aaron Rodgers by the beginning of 2020 that we are going to be either a great defense or a better defense with an offense that's going to continue to shine, or Aaron Rodgers is going to be hard-pressed not to take a quick look around and at least get out there and see what the numbers are going to be. Because right now, the numbers, what did it go up to? 125 million. By the time next year rolls around, you're going to have, let me get the list here. By the time next year rolls around, I got to call it up, find it here. By the time next year rolls around, and we'll talk about this list in a little bit, I pulled up the list of free agents for next year as it stands right now, but guys like Kirk Cousins are going to get contracts. Jimmy Garoppolo is we've got taken care of. Drew Brees is going to get a contract. That is, each individual quarterback getting signed is going to bump that number up. It's going to be over probably in the 130s, 40s. I don't know. By the time then the next year rolls around and Rodgers comes into a contract year, that's going to be upwards of 150. I've seen people say Aaron Rodgers, by the time his next contract comes around, he's going to be the first $200 million man in the NFL. That's a lot of money. So the number one thing I'm going to go back to that I've said all along is we need to try to find a way to extend him now and save some dough. I don't know if he would even do that. If I was Aaron Rodgers, I would be very reticent to extend now, and I'd be waiting it out. He's a smart guy again. You've got to play the numbers, and the numbers all work out in Aaron Rodgers' favor. And if the Packers aren't willing to pony up the cash, they're going to lose him. So this situation, I think we've got a little bit of time to do what we're going to do. And one of the things I want to give Jeff credit for this one too, is the fact that we let Martellus Bennett go kind of signals that this team, and I think it's really, the signal has been there. The writing's been on the wall since Aaron Rodgers went down. When I was hoping, listen, hey, Mike McCarthy, Brett Hundley, these guys have been working together. We're going to have to see what this kid can do. Well, he hasn't done much. And so we are clearly seeing, without a doubt right now, that this is an Aaron Rodgers winning team, okay? That is key, guys. If this is Aaron Rodgers, I'm just going to say this is Aaron Rodgers' team, all right? We'll just phrase it that way, and you guys know what I mean. If this is Aaron Rodgers' team, then the sky's the limit. If we can swap out D coordinator on the one hand and still win, even if that doesn't pan out for us. We can make some personnel moves, like Martellus Bennett comes in and then he's gone. We can survive that if this is Aaron Rodgers' team. We could survive a head coach change. Now, I think Mike McCarthy has had a big part to play in Aaron Rodgers' development, but when you look at what happened with Hundley, now he's no Aaron Rodgers, so you can't expect him to play at that level, and certainly not his first couple of games. He's only got 8, 9 to 11 quarters of football under his belt. So I'm still a little bit wait and see on that, and you never expect him to be Aaron Rodgers. But you can even make a head coach change, and you expect Aaron Rodgers is going to be the same Aaron Rodgers. The question there would be, what happens to our offensive system? Do we bring a guy in that goes away from the West Coast system? You got to figure Aaron Rodgers has enough clout for that not to happen. But that, to me, is at the head coach position is the place right now I would not be billing for a change, because of the relationship that McCarthy and Rodgers have. I think it's working quite well right now. I think there have been times when it hasn't been working as well, but I think it's working pretty well. And Aaron Rodgers has a lot of freedom. That's why a lot of the criticisms of the play calling don't always come down to Mike McCarthy. But with that said, D coordinator, that's the big one I think right now, and I think the one a lot of us are looking at. We have a list started on Good Packer Nation Morning, which, by the way, I'm just going to go ahead and grab it if I can find it here. I talked about Brett Venables, at Clemson there. He can have his contract thought out. Now, he would bring in a 4-3 defense, so that would be a big change. I do think we are at a situation where we probably have the personnel to maybe make a switch, as opposed to when we brought Capers in with Aaron Campman and guys that just it wasn't going to work out with. I think we might be able to pull that off. That, to me, might end up in offloading, though, a Clay Matthews, though Clay Matthews can play inside, which means that he could play a 4-3 OLB2. Kevin Green was brought up. I knew his name was going to come up. I'm not sure how I feel about Kevin Green. I love the guy. I loved him as a player. I loved him as a coach. I love the "it's time" comment. And he was a coach for us for a while. The question I have with Kevin Green is I'm not so sure that when he exited the Green Bay Packers, that there was some weirdness there. It was like he had decided to step away, and I'm not sure quite what was going on. If he decided to step away on his own, I've got to feel like he was at the point in his life where he wanted to get out of coaching, he wanted to get out of the NFL, and he's probably happy where he's at. However, if he's not, he might be an interesting thought there. He probably would have the knowledge to do it. Marvin Lewis, if he were to get fired, is another one. We've got Brett Favre has been brought up as well. And, of course, that feeds into the discussion that Brett Favre had. It was earlier this year, I believe, or maybe this past offseason, where he did not discount the possibility of coming back to the Green Bay Packers in some capacity, I think was the wording. Oh, my goodness. Would that be something? Now, that I think would have to be after the exit of both Ted Thompson and Mike McCarthy. I don't think that's going to happen anytime soon. So some of these are funny. Some of these are serious. Charles Woodson, another one that I thought was interesting. I don't know that Woodson's got his wine company, I think, is more of interest to him right now than anything else. And it would be tough to get him out of retirement. But at any rate, I think can survive wholesale changes. But I do want to play, since I don't have any guest to play devil's advocate on the podcast, I do want to point out the possibility that, change is just as much of a risk as anything, and it always is a stress. I say this a lot. I've said this in my companies. Anytime you make a change, it is a stress on the organization, even if the change is for the better. So if Dom Capers were to go, that is going to stress the organization. The question then is, you have to bring in somebody really dynamic to overcome that and bring excitement, rather than the mentality that, well, here we go again, and yet another coach got fired, and especially players. Players know, and this is just the fact of the matter, it's the players that play the game, not the defensive coordinators. And it's football, it's 11 on 11. It's our players that are losing games for us, not our defensive coordinator or our offensive coordinator. But the coach, and that's why that's exactly what the players will say if Dom Capers goes. We didn't play well enough for him to keep his job. So we will see what happens with that, but Dom Capers goes, we are still, think about it, bring in, who are you going to bring in? Bring in any of these guys on the list, bring in Ryan. We still are a team that has Clay Matthews, has Nick Perry, neither of which are producing. What are you going to do at the outside linebacker position as an offensive coordinator that is suddenly going to get Nick Perry a dozen sacks by the end of the season, that's suddenly going to get Clay Matthews 10 sacks by the end of this season? I'll tell you what you're going to do. Nothing other than motivate them at that position. And if you switch to a 4-3, now you've got other issues to deal with, because you got to make sure you have D ends that can rush the passer as well as set the edge. And we may not have the personnel to do it. So the problem there is just as much. Now, if this is Aaron Rodgers' team, then yes, maybe we still can win. But if this is Aaron Rodgers' team, we still could be in exactly the same situation we were, where, yes, maybe we can make the playoffs, but we can't make the Super Bowl. Or worse, we could be in a situation, if it doesn't work out and we don't get the right guy and we don't make the right personnel choices, we could offload Clay Matthews, bring somebody in who doesn't do any better. And we could very much be headed back to the 80s, much more so than the 90s, really quickly. So I have to play devil's advocate, because there is a very real possibility. And of course, we don't know anything. We don't know if they're actually going to make a move. And I think it was aptly said by Jeff this morning that Murphy's going to have to grow a set at some point and make these changes that are necessary if it's going to happen. Because number one, if Murphy isn't behind it, it's not going to happen. But number two, he's got to show that this organization is not going to settle for mediocrity. And what we're seeing right now is, around Aaron Rodgers, we're a mediocre football team. Now, to me, that has everything to do with the players. We're mediocre players. But then when you talk about the players, you have to talk about personnel decisions, which points directly to Ted Thompson. So is that where you go to make a move? Is it the defensive coordinator right now? We need somebody that can motivate players that actually are good. Is that the problem? How do we move forward here? But I definitely think I am on board with the fact that we're going to have to make some major changes in this organization. I just want to caution that we are definitely on a tipping point, and we could be pointing back to the 80s and not back to the 90s when we had, Brett Favre and we brought in Reggie White. Or I've also likened it to a situation where we could have, let's say we fire the head coach and we bring the wrong one back. Wait, what about Mike Sherman, who had Brett Favre, but we still couldn't get there? And for a while there, we were struggling to make the playoffs again. Finally, then getting back to the NFC Championship when the running game came around, but unable to get over the hump. All this to say, whichever side of it you're on, I'm trying to lay both sides out here, realistically speaking. And then all this just to say, I do believe that this Packers team is really at a tipping point. We talked about the Detroit Lions game as a watershed game in the 2017 season, and I think it is just a microcosm of what is now becoming a real big picture organizational question that now it's undeniable. It has to be answered as far as I'm concerned. And while I'm not high on Colin Cowherd, like a lot of people are, I think that was mostly just an inflammatory comment that he made about, I've said for years, Aaron Rodgers, Peyton Manning set the tone. Rodgers needs to go elsewhere. The team hasn't done anything for him. That's overinflated nonsense for the most part. The team has not done nothing for Aaron Rodgers. Look at who they've brought in. And they brought in Martellus Bennett. It's not our fault. It's not the Packers' fault, and it's not Ted Thompson's fault that Martellus Bennett didn't work out. It's Martellus Bennett's fault that he can't catch a ball. It's not Aaron Rodgers' fault. It's not Brett Hundley's fault. He was throwing catchable balls to Martellus Bennett too that Martellus Bennett then dropped. But at the same time, we're kind of set in a spot where, I do agree that, big picture changes are in the works. Now, how do you go about that? I think I've been thinking a lot about that, guys, and just to let you know, I'm going to try to work through that. Initially, I had a little bit of an outline to work through off-season changes and how you evaluate personnel and where we might consider our moves to be. Now that this has happened, especially Martellus Bennett being offloaded, our defense playing so poorly really is difficult for me to swallow because we have no excuses. We've got had all our players against the Detroit Lions. And then Mike McCarthy and Brett Hundley, he's had all this time with him. That's not panning out as of yet. So I will be coming out with a podcast, maybe trying to break down how we move forward and how we kind of evaluate where the problem lies and how to move forward, what the next step should be. So I'll be working on that. I can't do that right now. I kind of wish I could, but I can't do it right now. I need to put a lot more thought and investigation into that. But we will be talking about that in the near future. And definitely, I do think whichever side of the argument you're on, whichever way you think our needle is pointed, I think we do need to make some big organizational changes. I just do think in the back of my mind, I don't know if any of you out there have been a little concerned about it. There has been in the back of my mind this little whisper of an old cliche. Be careful what you ask for. Remember, we asked for Ted Thompson to sign free agents, and this year we got it, and it didn't work out. We've asked for years for Dom Capers to be fired or those that asked for McCarthy to be fired, and if we get it, just keep in mind, it doesn't always work out. Seriously, be careful what you ask for. Let me mention this because, and I know it's nobody that's listening to this podcast right now, I expect, but I absolutely, literally, remember last year when Aaron Rodgers, we were a 4-6 team for a while last year. I had people telling me, commenting, it is Aaron Rodgers is not getting it done, and literally commenting, it's Brett Hundley time. Be careful what you ask for. All right, so there's my caution. I do think it's a complicated thing. I don't think it's as simple as it seems on the surface, but we're going to talk more about that, of course. And it's very interesting to me. From my perspective, it's very interesting, even though, I have all the angst of why can't we win and, what's going on. But to me, it's a very interesting problem that we have. I just hope that, like Jeff said, that Murphy has the balls to go ahead, investigate, find out where the problem is, and let's get this thing fixed. All right, so moving on from that, changes, whether Rodgers will stay or go. Martellus Bennett now gone. On the horizon this Sunday, we have a game against the Bears to play. That's not going to go away. That's one thing that is absolutely certain. Well, I guess it's not absolutely certain. Maybe the zombie apocalypse will come by. Frankly, if the zombie apocalypse comes by, I hope that we can hire one of these zombies as our strength and conditioning staff and fill up our medical staff with those guys, because I'm sure they could tell us a lot about how to play football as the Walking Dead, and I think that would be very, very helpful, because right now this team is the Walking Dead. Let me bring up, it's Thursday, so I'm going to bring up the injury report. We usually play this as a game. I don't know about you. I'm not really in the mood for games right now because, this shakeup that's going on, while it could be a good thing long term, it's given me a lot of angst in the short run. But let's go through it. Actually, we are going to play the game because I just looked at the list. All right. So, guys, let's play our game. I know that you guys are familiar with Good Packer Nation Morning. What we do is assign a number between 1 and 5 to each of the players on the injury list. And this is a game kind of like golf. You try to have the lowest score. And so let's give it a try. Now, the criteria is basically what position does each player play at and how good are they at that position. And then we assign them a number 1 through 5. All right. So Ahmad Brooks, right up there with his back, is on the list. We've seen him there for weeks. This is a guy. Let's talk about Ahmad Brooks for a minute. He's a guy that I really think the Packers could have used. And I think when he was in, he was a benefit to the club. Remember, the Packers are missing, I think it was called the NASCAR package. Not just Clay Matthews and Nick Perry, but then Julius Peppers and Dayton Jones all at the same time, 4 pass rushers at the same time. Ahmad Brooks, I think, while not a panacea, is a little bit of an alleviation to that missing. And I think he might be a nice addition with Vince Beagle coming on, playing a good game. He might be a nice addition to this Packers defense. But he is on the list right now with his back injury still. Get well soon, Ahmad Brooks. I think we could really use him right now. He was limited, though. He did not participate last week. He's a limited participant. I'm going to give him a 4 just in terms of his position as an OLB, a pass rusher, and his veteran status. He's a smart guy. He still has a bull rush. We showed that. If you haven't seen that Patreon video, you can probably scroll down and find it. So we're going to give Ahmad Brooks a 4. Brian Bulaga, he's out for the year. He is a 4 as well. And will now, be off this list because he'll end up on IR. Morgan Burnett with the groin did not participate, guys. I'm giving him a 4 because I think this defense kind of runs off Morgan Burnett as the communicator, not so much the emotional leader. I think we still need an emotional leader. I think we might need that Mike Daniels back, and I don't think we've had him. But Morgan Burnett as a communications leader, I think, is extremely important. I'm figuring that he's not going to play. What a sad. This has been one of those years, in a year that we really needed to finally get over the injury bug. And that again goes to another question of change that we didn't talk about earlier. Strength and conditioning staff. I think we have as good a medical staff as there is out there. That's kind of after the fact. But are you a strength and conditioning staff must go kind of person? I think that's a complicated question as well, much more so than it seems on the surface. Justin McCray had the ankle. He was a limited participant. Would be very important to have back now that Brian Bulaga can't play. I'm going to give him a 3 because he's not that good, but he's at a very important position for us and may end up at tackle by the time all's said and done. Nick Perry was limited with his foot, a foot now. I'm giving him 4. I mean, he's very important to our defense. Lane Taylor, the guard, with his ankle, he was a full participant. I'm giving him a 4, though. He's incredibly important to what we want to do. Maybe I shouldn't give a guard a 4. Maybe that's not. I'm going to give him a 3, and I gave McCray a 3. All right. So, and lastly, Joe Thomas was a limited. He actually participated some. I think in our dime package, Joe Thomas coming back might be a big help. And that, coupled with perhaps getting Ahmad Brooks back and we've talked a lot this week, there's been a lot of talk about this synchronization between the pass rush and the coverage. And I think getting Joe Thomas back in dime in obvious passing downs and Ahmad Brooks back, that combination might be helpful. I'm going to give him a 3. I think that might be pushing it. He's a guy that's kind of, struggled to make the team, but I think he's having a good year so far. All right, guys, let's see. I'm going to tally it up. We got 8, 12, 15, 22, 25 for the Packers. And listen to this, guys. All right, so the Bears, Bryce Callahan, the defensive back, he did not participate with a knee. DB, I'm gonna give him a 3 at the cornerback position, but I don't think he's that big of a deal. Tom Compton, the offensive lineman with the ankle, did not participate. 3. Ronas Grasu, hand, was a full participant, but I'm gonna go 3. And again, I'm not as familiar, but Kyle Long is on there with the finger. He was a limited participant with a finger. I got to figure any old lineman that doesn't play because of a finger isn't worth his salt, but I'm going to give him a 4 because I think he's pretty important to what the Bears are going to try to do. Sheriff McManus, hamstring, did not participate. That's a 2. D.L. Robertson Harrison did not participate. D lineman, I'm going to give a 2, not a 3. All right, let's just do this quickly. Sims gets a 2. John Timu, a 3. And Trevathan is on the list with a calf. He's a definite 4 for them. Big-time player. The big hitter, the one that drilled Devontae Adams and knocked him out. Marcus Wheaton, 3. And Cody Whitehair, though, also on the list. But he was a full participant. I'm expecting him to play, but I'm going to give him the other 4. All right, guys, so we got, for the Bears, we got 9, 13, 15, 19, 22, 26, 29. We got 33, guys. So we finally win the injury game for the first time all season, 25-33. And let's go back and look at our side of it now that the game is done. It's funny, I don't really feel like we've won anything because we know Brian Bulaga is going to IR. Ahmad Brooks, I think, is big. I think if he can play, that will help us out. Morgan Burnett, again, also, he just got back, guys. And we know how much the communication suffered when he wasn't in. And he did not participate. I would kind of be surprised. It's up in the air. But again, that's a groin injury. That's one of those that may very well point. To me, I think warm-ups are critical. I think hydration and warm-ups, there might be something going wrong there. With all of these hammies, all of these groin injuries, all of these little dings and tweaks, things like an ankle. Ankles are basically an awkward injury. Sometimes a fatigue-based injury does happen, but it would be very, very difficult to determine causality of an ankle based on conditioning. Even though those things there is a correlation between fatigue and coordination in particular, and the jump from lack of coordination to what could be a major injury and a major awkward injury. There is correlation there, but I think causality is a much, much different story on that with the ankles, especially the ACLs. Joe Thomas, I think, would be big coming back, but honestly, right now, losing Bulaga is huge. I don't think I'm going to figure Morgan Burnett won't be able to play. I think we're going to be, again, up against it on the defense. Maybe so far, though, we didn't play any better on defense when we had everybody in as well. So I guess it's maybe neither here nor there, right? So quickly, let's get into the Bears game. Before we do that, just let me go through my tabs here, make sure I have done my due diligence and kind of covered everything. And I do want to just stop in the middle of this video because I think I'm just going to cut this and post it. I want to get it out to you guys, especially Chris, who may be laid up in the hospital looking for something to listen to. But I do want to go through our Patreon patrons, just say thank you to our new folks. The most recent ones that I see, okay? So without going through the entire list, I'm just going to kind of draw up because, again, it's been changing every day, and that's really been encouraging to us. We still need it, guys, and if you can share the page if you enjoy what you hear. I want to thank Jamie out there, Montgomery out there, John out there. I know Mike was a recent one as well. Brent was recent too, and I think Matthew as well. Guys, the list is growing all the time. I really feel like I should go back and thank Gary, Susan, Jose, Giselle, Angela, Tim, Mike, Jeff, and Greg as well. I hope I don't miss any now that I've gone through the list in weird order. DM, Chris. Chris is out there. Mike, I said. And then John, Montgomery, and Jamie definitely new. Kurt and Russell as well. And Russell right now, I got to call out Russell just really quickly in the middle of the podcast. He jumped in at the $20 level, gets a special shout out on one of our shows. Russell, thank you so much. We really appreciate all the encouragement you've been giving us, and I hope you continue to enjoy the content that we're throwing up there. But this is part of your rewards at that level, man, and we really do appreciate it and want to say thank you specifically to you, Russell, this morning. So, all right, well, back to it, guys. We've got what could be it's funny now because after the Lions game, I feel like I still want to win. I want to find a way to compete at least in the NFC North. But to me right now, and you can comment on this, I am looking more toward we have to make sure that we don't give up on this season because we still have young players that need development. They're going to get a ton of reps. Guys like Kevin King, Josh Jones, Brett Hundley, for crying out loud. He's going to get a ton of reps that are still meaningful for him and meaningful for our team moving forward. But what are the team's chances of being able to compete and beat a Bears team that Mike McCarthy says he is confident we are going to be able to beat? Now, I got to give credit to Jeff. He sent me the line on the game. I thought the Packers were dogs by 3. I guess maybe it changed, but we're underdogs by 6 right now. We have to travel away. And I think I texted back. The first thing I texted back was, is that generous? Only 6 points. This is a Packers team that has really struggled since Hundley has got in there to get in the end zone. One thing we can say about Brett Hundley, and I'm not sure if it's an encouragement or an indictment, but he's been able to get into the end zone on his own, on the ground, in each of these games, in each of the games that he's had the entire time to prepare for. But that's not going to cut it. That's not going to bring us wins. And what I'm seeing is, a kid that he's just a little bit gun shy in the pocket. He's not, he tends to shrug his shoulders and drop his eyes, and that is so correctable that it, to some extent, gives me some hope. He's been missing receivers that are open. I think the long ball, I've mentioned several times, I think the vertical game, you got to take your shots. And Hundley mentioned this earlier, in his locker room interview. You don't force those. You take them when they come. You get a single high look, you got a perimeter go route, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We haven't been able to hit on those, but Davante Adams himself said this week that he needed to make an adjustment on the ball. I am glad because that's what I saw, and that's what I said on Good Packer Nation Morning. I said once he located the ball, he needed to move out toward the boundary, and he didn't do that. And he also, I think, used the wrong hand in that particular situation. I'm glad that Davante Adams at least took up for Hundley. These things go both ways. The ball placement certainly could have been better. But at any rate, we're still looking for that vertical throw, that vertical completion. I think across the middle, the intermediate in breaking, I've mentioned several times, I've seen guys open. My plan that I've been working on is to show you Lance Kendricks coming wide open across the middle with the windows in the NFL aren't big, but he had a window on either side of the inside linebacker, Jared Davis, who had cheated up on the play action. And Hundley missed him. He's going to have to get that corrected. We're going to have to complete those passes. We're a West Coast offense. Now, with that said, I'm not negative. There are those that think, we need to move to Callahan. Those that think, Hundley's no better than a third stringer. I don't agree with that. I think he is capable. He's capable. He's going to have to get the timing. I think the timing is going to be rough. I don't think it's going to get any easier moving forward because now he's not going to have Brian Bulaga locking down at the right tackle position. So the pocket's not going to get any cleaner for Brett Hundley. He's going to have to perform better under pressure. We mentioned on Good Packer Nation Morning this week that the Pro Football Focus broke down his plays under pressure and plays when he didn't have pressure. He had a 100 passer rating when he was not under pressure, and then when he was under pressure, it dropped down immediately to 39%, which is or passer rating, not percent, but 39 when he was under pressure, which is exactly the number. I think his passer rating against the Saints was 39.4. So, is Brett Hundley improving? I think the answer is yes. There's really, having watched this game again, slow mode a few things. I haven't had a lot of time to spend on it, unfortunately, but I think the answer is yes. But as Hundley himself said, if you saw the locker room interview, he said, "Listen, this game is about winning points and winning," and I was very glad to hear him say that. Now the question is, can we get those points and get that win? I think that's still totally up in the air, and for those that are down on Hundley, I have to admit that. I think it's totally up in the air whether Brett Hundley can get us in the end zone without running there himself. And in the NFL, I mean, that's going to get you knocked out at some point. You can't live off that. You have to make those decisions when they're there to run the ball. I think he's done a pretty good job of that thus far. I don't think he's been just looking to run. I think he has been, and maybe it's just semantics at this point, but you can let me know what you think. I don't think that Brett Hundley is just looking to run. I just think that his physical body is reflecting that he has more trust in his legs than his arms. And maybe it's just semantics at this point, because either way, you've got to be able to complete a pass out of the pocket under pressure. But I do think the opportunity is there for him to stand in that last second, deliver a ball, and another thing that he talked about in his locker room interview was, getting in a rhythm. And he talked about the 11 personnel hurry up. All right, this is what I really want you guys to comment, because I am very much for. I think we've had success other than the Mason Crosby botched field goal that was botched before Mason Crosby even got his foot on it, and long before it was tipped. Our initial scripted drive has been successful, correct? I mean, I think most people would agree. Our initial scripted drive has been successful. Okay, good. Continue that. The only other success we seem to have was in hurry up in 11 personnel with plenty of wide receivers out there. And, whether you go Aaron Jones can catch out of the backfield. I think we need to get him back on the horse, because I think we missed him in 3/4 of the Lions game where we pulled him out and said he wasn't in the doghouse. So I think we need to go scripted first series, second series. I would like to see us go straight into a no huddle and just let Hundley get into that rhythm. Put it on the wide receiver shoulders. You've got to lock the defense into a particular set, but if you can lock them in and you get our personnel group, because we're not going to be able to change personnel either, but if we can get our personnel group matched up in the right set, and Hundley is able to move and give motion to kind of discover man versus zone, which again is critical in the pre-snap read. Hundley has done a good job of that. And I can show examples of that. He's done a good job of that. I think he's capable. And we saw him have success in that 11 personnel hurry up. Now, some of that we know at the end of the game, and Hundley said himself, they're playing quarters, they're keeping everything underneath. And we saw all the passes underneath and inside. But I say give him a chance in the no huddle. Let him go ahead and get into a little bit of a rhythm and go from there. Because we have not, after that initial scripted series, in both of these games, we've had dry spells on the offense. Something's got to supercharge that. And I think, a guy like Lance Kendricks, guys like Jordy Nelson, Randall Cobb, depending on who you put out in your 11 personnel, Aaron Jones at the running back position can be a real weapon in that situation, especially if you can complete a pass or two in the hurry up and then come back with a draw play. So that's kind of where I'm looking for on offense. On defense, I got to be honest, I'm not a throw up your hands kind of guy, but with Morgan Burnett, if he doesn't play, I am almost at the point of throwing up my hands at the defense. And I'm not at Dom Capers, at the players out there. We've got players that are making one good play. We've got one or two consistent players on this defense right now. I would name Kenny Clark and, of course, Blake Martinez as consistent. But remember, Martinez is a consistent liability on third downs in pass coverage. He's consistent at that, which is why I think we need Joe Thomas back to some extent, because the Nitro package isn't doing it all for us all the time either in terms of covering tight ends and running backs out of the backfield. So I am almost at the point of throwing up my hands at this defense. We've got our pass rushers. We've spent money on the pass rushers. And that's just there. And Mike Daniels is now a pass rusher for us. pisses and moans when he gets taken off the field on third down, yet why isn't he collapsing the pocket and commanding double team? They don't even need to double team Mike Daniels right now. He's still good against the run. I'm not saying that. But, he got paid. Perry got paid. Matthews got paid. And right now, it's our second-year guys like Kenny Clark, Blake Martinez, and our rookies like Josh Jones and Kevin King who are out there. And Kevin King has struggled at times, and so has Josh Jones. But at least they're out there playing their hearts out and playing like they mean business. So I don't know about you. I don't know that I have an answer for the defense right now other than, and you can talk about synchronizing the pass rush and the coverage all you want. The fact of the matter is, if the pass rush does not get there in time, the pass rush being faster and shorter term will always help the coverage. There's no two ways about it. So to some extent, I don't understand this synchronization talk. I do understand it from a football perspective. But one thing I don't think there's any excuse for is Matthews and Perry need to get to the quarterback faster. I mean, that should be their goal. If you do that, the dominoes are going to start to fall our way for coverage on the back end of that period. That's just the way it works in my mind. If you have any particular things that you think could be an answer in terms of personnel groupings, I mean, there has been the notion, I mentioned it on the show the other day, the KISS principle. Maybe we need to keep it simple. Maybe we need to go down to a base 3-4 with, get Martinez on the inside, determine who's going to be your ILB, whether that be Morgan Burnett, and we go sort of a nitro. I do think to some extent, now that I'm thinking about it, really, you can't quite keep it too simple, I think, because you are looking at, if you're able to, say, stack the box, stop the run, maybe get a negative yardage play, and you put a team in a 3rd and 12 or something, you would want to definitely change the personnel grouping to reflect that. But at the same time, we haven't been able to stop anybody on 3rd and 14, no matter what we do anyway. So do we need to simplify? Do we need to get more of our veterans out there? Do we need to, when actually some of our rookies are playing our best ball, especially, Kevin King, I would be hard-pressed to, unless, you're for swapping Randall out on the perimeter. And I think Randall's finally come into his own as a slot corner, and Kevin King's the guy on the perimeter. So to me right now with the defense, I am almost at the point of throwing up my hands because, we paid our money for a pass rush. And yes, as you get older, guys like Clay Matthews aren't going to be the same guy. And Clay Matthews did some good things in this game, but I think he had 1 tackle and 1 assist, if I'm remembering right. And we got to get more out of him. For Nick Perry to have a half of a sack against the Detroit Lions, and guys, this is a Detroit Lions team whose offensive line was obliterated. I mean, what are we going to be able to do? And maybe we can hope that the guys that are on the injury list for the Bears can't play. But I don't even have hope for that right now necessarily. And honestly, I am laying right now, I'm watching the way this defense plays, and I'm laying it at the feet of the defenders and the defensive players. Because we've got a guy for the situation. We've got guys that are covering each of the responsibilities. Which means that the play call on defense should be good enough to make a play. It's not like we're play calling ourselves out of defensive plays right now. Now there was the sense in which, and I mentioned this, Matt Stafford looked like he was in the box with Dom Capers. But at the same time, these players have to play better. They're getting paid way too much money to not play better than this. All right, questions and comments, thoughts on that will be appreciated. Bears rivalry, guys, this is important as we close the show. This is not a joke, guys. At least to me, it's not. I went down there. All right, I was there. JR was there. Him. My son Jonah was there. My nephew Devin bought us tickets to the Bears versus the Packers at Lambeau. Jeff, our community's own Jeff, my cousin was there as well. Hung out with him. We had a great time, and we watched the Packers go ahead for the first time in so many years in this Packers-Bears season. Now, so what is at stake in this game? At this point, I still want to win the game and believe that we could have a chance moving forward if Brett Hundley starts playing a lot better and our defense starts playing a lot better. At the same time, I got to be realistic and say that the defense hasn't shown me they can do that, and Brett Hundley still remains to be seen as well. However, what is at stake for me is I do not want this Bears-Packers rivalry to be tied up again. And so I want to win for more reasons than just whether or not I think we have a possibility at a wild card in the playoffs, because I think that is, swiftly drying up, if not already gone, because the Detroit game I thought was really important for us moving forward. I don't think this team is going to panic. That's one good thing. But I do think that they need to do something. We're going to have to find a way to if we're going to get a win against the Bears. And I definitely don't want to see this rivalry tied up again. We spent all this time getting ahead. Let's stay there, guys. All right, well, I'm interested in your thoughts, comments. Again, please jump on there and let Chris know that you're pulling for him. He's in the hospital recovering from surgery with the spiral fracture, both the tibia and the fibula, and that's not a good thing. So, and with that, I will go ahead and close it up. I will definitely be back on probably later in the week. It's Thursday today, so we'll see what we can do moving forward with either, ways to evaluate the changes that need to be made. I think is interesting to me and complicated because I don't really understand enough about that, but I'm going to try to parse it out the best I can. I hope you will be interested in that. Let me know. And also looking at Brett Hundley, I'm trying to decide whether to look at a play that he missed or a play that he made, because he did make some plays, some really good ones. I saw him, interestingly enough, make a little hand gesture to Jordy Nelson that I believe was a play change that only happens between the single receiver and the quarterback, and resulted in a really nice little, it was a little flare pass, if I remember right, for a nice gain that he blocked up well. He motioned to get the, just shortly, he motioned to determine what the defense was going to do. And they stayed in zone, which meant that Jordy Nelson, rather than being on Slay, was it Jordy Nelson or Devontae Adams? I'm sorry, I shouldn't have done this without looking at it. But anyway, he ended up motioning away from Slay and throwing the ball away from Slay because of the motion and his ability to do a pre-snap read. And I think that's a positive sign. We just got to get a lot more consistency and find our way into the end zone. All right, well, that's going to do it for me today. This has been 57 minutes, so I guess in terms of, it's basically a good Packer Nation morning for you. Felt bad about not being able to go live, and I definitely have missed all the interaction that takes place on the live show, but I hope that this has been something worth listening to for you, and if you hadn't, like maybe Chris out there, hadn't been able to catch up on the news, I hope that some of this is interesting for you, and we'll catch up with you on the flip side. Let me know all your comments and thoughts in the comment section below, guys. All right, to all the cool kids, thank you so much for your support. We appreciate it all the time. And I'll be back again soon. We'll talk to you again, hopefully before a big win against the Chicago Bears. Go Pack.
Packer Nation Worldwide.